All right, and we are live. Put that in here. Hi, everyone. It's been fun, hasn't it? Welcome, everyone, to the live chat. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Of course, it is Wednesday, December 10th. We have a lot of changing dynamics in the weather pattern. We have a lot of snow potential. Yep, for this Sunday, we're going to talk about that and explain what is driving that potential. But of course, as many of you know, I wanted to get this off the bat. Okay. You guys know I'm a Mets fan, right? I've been when you guys, some of you guys who have been here during the summer when we have our live chats have seen me go and check out the games. This hat is from 1984. Okay, it's the old version where you could move the uh, little nubs here to adjust your hat. Real old school. This thing has sweat, blood, and a whole lot of tears. And I've been through some bad Met seasons, bad off seasons. Um, and it was hold it, forgot to take off one thing here. There we go. Okay, good. Okay, and it's been rough. As my wife will tell you earlier on today, I nearly had a conniption. Um, so I just want to share this for all my fellow Met fans out there. I have no idea what the team is trying to do. Now, to be fair, they have been underproducing and they haven't been doing well for a long time. All right. They had one season where they actually almost got to the World Series. All right. And they played amazingly. And then everything just kind of collapsed, right? With last year. So I get the idea. Look, you want to shake up things. I got the Nimmo thing. I get it. Um, there is no way you can explain. I could deal with Pete Alonso, kind of, very not really, but I could see it where you're trying to move in a different direction, younger. But if you want to reduce runs, you want to keep the best closer in the game, which they didn't do, and you replace him with a guy who not only did Pete Alonso literally destroy this guy's psyche 2 years ago in the playoffs with a home run, but he was a disaster for the Yankees last year in every pressure situation, and now you're going to have him close. Steven. Yeah. Maybe you should save the rant for the end of the thing. No, I just want to get it out of the way. I'll just put it this way. I am incredibly disappointed, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't know what the heck they're doing, but man, we'll see what happens. Because I don't want to do it at the end of it, because I want to talk about the weather the rest of the way. So let's do that. I said what I had to say, and you guys all know how ticked off I am about all of that. Then let's go to what is going on with the weather pattern. Still not. I still got more to say, but I'll just move on. Um, so here, no, there is no but. It's just ridiculous. But let's just talk about what is evolving here for for this. No, you're right. This is why I have to have my wife here, because if it wasn't for her, I'd probably be ranting on for the next 2 hours. So you're right. You're absolutely right. You're right. When you're right, you're right. Um, but I will say this here. Let's talk about what is evolving with this weather pattern, because another thing that has been going crazy of late is everyone claiming that we are going to be going into a torch for Christmas and for the rest of the winter, and the winter's over and all that good stuff. And it's kind of funny because now the GFS pulls out a blizzard out of nowhere. So everyone's posting that because that's reasonable 10 to 15 days out. So, what is actually happening here? Well, let's look at the actual observations. What is taking place that has anything changed from the winter forecast? Well, our La Nina is rapidly weakening. In fact, as you know, we're down to only one area, Nino 3.4, as a La Nina state, and that's just barely hanging on. The SOI has been falling off at a pretty steady rate and is now below the La Nina threshold at 3.84. So it's losing its influence. And we can see that convection is starting to fire up around the date line. Okay, so that's starting to change. So this influences a better potential of more active subtropical jet stream. And our MJL has moved into phase 8 and kind of bouncing, expected to kind of bounce around into between a neutral state and in phase 8 and kind of bounce around in that area. So, again, the idea in the winter forecast of a weak tropical signal playing out perfectly. And you can see here the collapse of our La Nina starting to take place over the past 9 days. See the western edge there in Nino 4 right around here is actually warming. Meanwhile, the Pacific is all warm. So remember all that concern about the cold pool that was sitting in here? Well, that's pretty much vanished. And now we have above normal temperatures. Our Atlantic here is lined up when the atmosphere supports a negative NAO for this to be supportive and to rebuild on itself. And you can see the EP flux here continuing to support the transport from warm air from the mid latitudes up to the higher latitudes in the stratosphere. So this is going from the troposphere to the stratosphere. And you can also see that Earth New School. And you're also seeing the stratospheric warming that has been established that is dominating the higher latitudes in the stratosphere. So everything here in terms of the observations are all lining up. Our QBO is still in a negative state. It will transition to a westerly state by this spring and summer, and then we'll talk about that for next winter. And then we have our polar vortex here, that disruption, where we're seeing another warming that's going to take place, another disruption going to take place, and then we see another rebound. And the forecast here, again, a lot of volatility out here, but don't be surprised as we move forward that we see another signal like this. I am hard pressed to believe that we'll see another major stratospheric warming event, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get more stretching continuing in late December, mid January, early February. So, in other words, this pattern is going to continue because nothing has changed in the observations. Nothing. Okay. There is a lot of evolution taking place here because as we get each stretch, we're going to get a rebound. So, we're going to get cold shots and warm shots. Now, the one thing that happened that I wasn't expecting was the major stratospheric warming event and the wind reversals in the stratosphere, which completely nuked the polar vortex. So you ended up with this signal showing up and locking in. Now, why is this important? Okay, so the start of the stratospheric warming, right, that happened in November, that fundamentally changed the game here for this winter, is that we started off with basically a broken down polar vortex that has reformed into a weak, stretched form with all of the observations supporting a rebuild of that. Not to mention the sea surface temperatures like the negative IOD, which actually does not create a jet extension. What it does is it creates a retraction and sets up the likelihood of a strong upper level low locked in around the Hudson Bay. So what do we see in the model guidance here? Now, a lot of people, they use the operational and see a huge ridge. But what you really want to do when you're doing long range forecasting is using a ensemble guidance to minor out any of the extremes. So This is the 46-day solution here. And again, you don't take this verbatim, but what is the overall theme? Well, the overall theme is a trough returning to the Aleutians, a ridge building over Alaska, a broad trough, a crushed southeast ridge, and this upper level low dropping into the Hudson Bay. You're also seeing that in the ensembles here. Okay, this is the EPS showing up, and a lot of people are focusing in on Christmas and saying, oh, it's going to be super warm. But what you actually have here is not a ridge building up the East Coast, but a suppressed ridge, a broad trough. This signal here means there could be some overphasing. So you have a strong ridge here building into Alaska, your trough, broad trough here. Yes, it's not going to be 20 degrees below normal anymore. The true Arctic air that we've been experiencing, we'll experience over the next couple of days, is going to retract and rebound northward. Um, so yeah, you're not going to see a continuation of the well below normal, very dry, cold conditions. We're going to rebound more towards near normal, and we're going to see a thermal gradient setting right up right over us and a persistent storm track. So basically, when we look at the temperature forecast, what are we seeing? We're seeing a forecast for us being on the cold side of a strong thermal gradient with a lot of moisture potential. What does that look like? The winter forecast. It's essentially the winter forecast. There is no pattern here where you get a deep negatively tilted trough over the eastern United States persistently and major nor'easters. This is the pattern I've been sharing, where you get cold air trying to come in, it runs into this ridge. You get a lot of cold air built into the Great Lakes and the northern plains, a lot of lake effect snow, and we are on that storm track. Sometimes it'll rain, sometimes it'll snow. Every so often, we'll get a major storm, and we have to watch out for clippers. So, what type of pattern are we in? Well, this is the pattern, zone 5. Number 5 is what we're in right now. We're watching these clippers drop in through. And then sometimes they cut up through the Great Lakes, and sometimes they cut off through the Mid-Atlantic. And later, we might, around the holidays, around Christmas, we might see a track where it cuts up through zone and track 3 or track 6 as the pattern reloads. And then we go back into track 4 and potentially track 7, right? So basically, everything that we're seeing is exactly what is part of the winter forecast, what was expected. The only thing that really wasn't expected was the fact that we had such an Arctic blast set up that really altered the degree in which this December is going to be well below normal. I figured it was going to be below normal, but based on the readings that we have and some of the record lows we've already seen, it's going to be well below normal. But the problem with well below normal temperatures is that you also end up being very dry because most likely if you're going to be around 10 degrees for a low or in the single digits for a low in December, you're also going to have a very strong high pressure system, which means you're going to have a lot of dry air and a suppressed storm track. So that's why, in a way, this is actually good news to see this kind of retract and us recentering this thermal gradient. On the other side, this is actually also really good news that we had this event because now we've cooled off the water temperatures around the immediate coast to where it would support snowfall on the coastal plain. And we also built up our snowpack over New England and over the Poconos and Catskills to help sustain cold air masses lock in. And also, we've cooled the boundary layer at the surface here. So it's primed us to set up into this next stormy pattern. So everything that we're seeing is pretty much what I want to see in this forecast. There's nothing here that thus far has altered or would make me say, gee, this winter forecast isn't going to work out. So things that would make me say that. If La Nina was much stronger, that would be a problem. That would support a very strong southeast ridge. So when you're looking at the model guidance, the reason why I am not so gung-ho with a very warm end of December, more like near normal, is because A, the model guidance has been way amplified the southeast ridge in thinking that La Nina is stronger, the La Nina influence is stronger than what it really is. This is why we keep on seeing big warm ups in the long range guidance. And then by the time we get under 10 days, it's actually much colder because you haven't really changed any of the fundamentals to cause a pattern change of that type. All you've done is allow the polar vortex to reconsolidate after being completely destroyed. And so you're not going to get the sustained Arctic air, you're just going to get waves of polar air. So step away from the extremes, and then you got a realistic forecast. So that's where we are right now. And so now that you understand that, now it's a better understanding of what's going on over the next 10 days. So right now we had a pretty good snowfall up here in the Poconos and Catskills, somewhere around 1 to 3 inches of snow is being reported in these spots. Rain along the coast, warm air. Here comes our cold front with very cold air right behind it. And in fact, when we take a look at 850 millibar temperatures, you can see that cold air transport really starting to drive in. This type of cold air will be building in just in time to really knock down our temperatures for tomorrow morning. It's also going to set up the potential for some lake effect snow showers and snow squalls coming off of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, possibly getting into the Poconos and Catskills. I would not be surprised if we see a snow shower or two down towards the coastal plain via the strong winds here at 850 millibars, which you can see right here. Pull up 850 millibar winds. So you can see that lining up for tomorrow, just taking any of that moisture off the Great Lakes and dropping it right into the coastal plain right here, setting up not only a windy day tomorrow, but the potential for a few snow showers. So we're lining up in that scenario for tomorrow with plenty of cold air coming in. We still have some rain here along the coast. It's clearing out. The snow is clearing out, lifting through northwestern Connecticut and into New England. And then here comes the cold front coming through, and that's going to cause our temperatures to plummet and the potential for a few snow showers. Again, looking for a dusting to maybe an inch. I'm not sure if anyone actually sees any real accumulation out of this, but I would not be surprised if someone picks up a little inch here or there around the Poconos and Catskills. So the weather pattern here is certainly plenty active. We have one short wave after another. This is clearly a clipper pattern, all marching its way through at a 250 millibar winds. We don't have strong blocking here. Okay. We do have some above normal heights here around northern Canada, kind of bleeding into Greenland, but not really a true negative NAO block. What is a true negative NAO block? What I'd want to see with a negative NAO block is you see this upper level low here that's on the tip of Greenland? What I want is for it to be here, right here. That's when you can start talking about major winter storms. All right. So there's two factors that I want to look for. One, a robust ridge, not flat, but robust, kind of like a nice little hump right here, right? And I want to see this feature down here. Why? Because this feature amplifies short waves diving in, and this feature blocks everything up. Right now, we're close, but not good enough. So this tells me that this pattern as it is right now, it's good enough for fast moving clippers, fast moving precipitation events, but not major winter storms. So that takes us to our weather pattern for this weekend. And what I want to do first is set up the jet streak. Okay. And this is at Sunday morning, setting up between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. And you see this setup here? You see how you get this little jet streak here? This setup right here helps to enhance what we call divergence and diffluence here. So this jet streak sets up the potential for a low pressure system to rapidly organize. The reason why the models have been going back and forth on the potential for snowfall in this scenario is that the guidance that's very weak and only produces a few snow showers has this jet streak pretty weak. In the guidance where you have a robust snowfall, that jet streak is basically like what we see here. So that is what we're going to be watching for over the next 48 hours to see what actually locks in here. Most likely, it's going to be this jet streak based on everything I'm seeing with the European, the GFS, the AI guidance, the CMC guidance. That it's leaning more and more towards this when you take an average of all the model runs. And this makes the most sense based on the fact that our ridge axis at this time, and we'll go to the ensembles during this time period, right here, spikes up. So again, why am I using the ensembles here? Well, the ensembles here gives me a good idea of what the average guidance here of all the extremes. So you're seeing this ridge axis pop up here right around where? Right around Montana. Not perfect, but close enough. So why am I not looking for a major storm? Well, along with the ridge axis, okay, look at the trough here. Notice the orientation is positive. So when you have a positively tilted trough marching its way through like this, that means, okay, we don't really have any blocking here, so everything's progressive, everything can move. That means that anything that develops here is going to move really quickly out. You're going to have the potential for a burst of lifting, absolutely, but everything's fast, progressive. So you want to cut short your precipitation totals because unless something really unique happens, like some really intense convective precipitation, which we'll talk about in a second, you don't have enough time to produce a major snowfall. You have enough time to produce a light to moderate snowfall, absolutely. So let's look at the dynamics that are involved in that. Well, we talked to look at 500 millibars here, and you see this setup here for Sunday. Again, there's a positive tilt. You have PVA coming in. You have some lifting involved here. You're also seeing that here at 850 millibars. And you see this little tilt right here. This is the formation of the mid-level low. So this tells me the surface low is developing on Sunday morning right around here and then steadily intensifying while leaving. So this is a precipitation shield that is going to be broken, light, and then it starts to intensify as the low pressure system starts to organize. And it's organizing because Arctic air is interacting with our warmer waters along the coastal waters. So you have low-level phrenogenesis interacting with the jet streak. So you have your warm water here, right? And you have your land. So you have your gradient all set up with natural rising air. Then that's enhanced by the jet streak. So now you get a stronger rising motion. That rising motion is interacting with that low pressure, driving moisture into the coastal plain. And what is it interacting with on the coastal plain? It's interacting with this Arctic air that is driving in. And look at the gradient as a result of this. Now, this is where things get pretty interesting here because on the coast, you're going to be right around freezing. Okay. Even Cape May, you might even see like a little bit of rain mixed in at like 33, 34 degrees. But here in central New Jersey, you're talking about upper 20s. But the upper level temperatures are even colder. So, what you end up with is an environment where you could be convectively unstable, and this could lead to some convective snowfall for a very, very short period of time. So this is a quick burst. So this comes in, you could get a heavy burst, and then it's out. And this is all focused on the I-95 corridor into the southeast. Why not to the northwest? Because with this air mass, it's also going to be very dry. So I'm not expecting a lot of precipitation up here because of the dry air. Most likely a lot of virga setting up here. So you have just enough moisture lined up with a very powerful thermal gradient at the vertical and horizontal for a short period of time, and that is all interacting with moisture. Let's take a look at the precipitable water value during this time period. Just enough moisture to set up an accumulating snowfall. So everything's lined up here to really produce a nice 2 to 4, maybe 3 to 6 inch snowfall right in the area line from, let's say, Long Island, possibly the southern coast of Connecticut, down through the southern Hudson River Valley, New York City Metro, central New Jersey, most of southern New Jersey, outside of Cape May and maybe Wildwood. Maybe that's has a little bit more mix to it. But down into the northern Delmarva and right off into Washington. So you guys have been waiting for a little snowfall. You're going to get it on Sunday based on everything aligning, as long as that jet streak sets up. That's what we're going to be watching over the next couple of days. I would stay away from any guidance that goes above 6 inches because of the speed of this system. But the one caveat I'll put on there is if we start to see in the mesoscale guidance 48 hours out more signs of convective snowfall, we could be in for a very big surprise. But I don't have data to support that, so I'm not saying that's going to happen. But that would be one of the factors that would be very surprising, that would be possible in this setup because of the thermal gradient you're seeing. First of all, we'll go to the surface. Let's see here, surface temperatures. Oop, there we go. So surface temperatures, you're in the upper 20s to lower 30s on the I-95 corridor, 32 to 34 right in southern New Jersey. Look at that true Arctic air, which means you have a lot of dry air back here. Then at 925 millibars during that same time period, plenty of cold air, plenty of support for rising motion. And the same thing here at 850 millibars. Very powerful gradient setting up here. But again, everything exits quickly. So this is essentially Sunday morning. So let's say snow showers starting at about 3, 4 a.m., becoming more intense as you head towards 6 a.m., and then continuing on till noon and then tapering off from noon to 2. So maybe some lingering snow showers for the Giants and Eagles games because they'll be playing at home as this all clears out. So this is all lining up, or this is probably the best shot we've seen in some time for the I-95 corridor for snow accumulation. And there won't be any factor like, hey, we have to wait for it to stick because it's too warm. We don't have to worry about that. The boundary layer is going to be cold enough. This all comes into the fact that, well, that Arctic air that you guys have been calling wasted cold air, some of you guys have been calling wasted cold air, there's no such thing. Everything leads into the environment that we're going to be moving into, which is setting up to be pretty interesting in January and February, but also now. And I wouldn't let your guard down around Christmas either. Not that I'm buying the GFS, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't buy this torch idea either. Because I would not be surprised by the time we get to our 7 day period that instead of maybe 50s, we're more like in the 40s or 30s rather than 50s. So we'll see how that plays out. But I would not be surprised if it gets knocked down because the pattern just doesn't support it. So what that looks like at the surface on the 06Z guidance, let me pull that up here. Here we go. What that looks like here is this type of development. Look, see, it forms, it intensifies, it leaves very quickly. So this is a very fast event. And then one thing that's interesting here is that you kind of get this little inverted trough. Don't know if I buy this just yet, but we could actually end up with a few snow showers on Tuesday as well. I think this might be a little bit overdone, so I'm not buying it just yet. I want to see more data. But what I'm just trying to show is that this is a very fast moving system and it's very focused. and it's focused on the I-95 corridor. And you guys wanted it, you're gonna get it. So that's what we have setting up right now. Now it's time to answer the questions. So let me go to that and make sure that is shown up. Okay, so let's jump to the premium dashboard first and pull that up first. And we will answer all the questions we have in place here. And then, of course, check out social media and see what's going on there. Social media seems active, right, hon? Oh, boy. Okay, so let's see. What do we have here? Let's see that the dry day this weekend is Saturday. Yeah, pretty much. Take a look at Earth News School. If the current polar vortex at 70 millibars and 10 millibars, which are stretched like crazy, are already warming again, is the consolidated vortex the next warming disruption? Should be very interesting to watch. Yeah, I don't buy this idea that it's going to consolidate and then just get very strong, like some of the guidance is showing way out in a 10 to 15 day period. Um, because there's nothing in the atmosphere that would separate that would cause that to happen. So I'm not buying it just yet. Will there be snow on the ground in Queens at 8:30 a.m. Today? What, tomorrow? Um, that's an interesting question. No, in Queens, no. Sunday morning. Yeah. Well, Queens, okay, so I want to be very careful. There'll be definitely snow on the ground in cold surfaces. If you happen to be anywhere near a subway, probably not, because subways. I know it's early, but any thoughts on early to mid January? No definitive ideas. It's a little bit too far out, but I do expect us to be active. That is for sure. But I don't have any details. Uh, There's a apparently there's a winker. Oh, I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing good because winter is a. Oh well, never mind. The Borgata. Yeah, the Borgata Winter Hooker Open starts on January 3rd and runs through the 18th. Why that long? That's long. I want to get an idea on what it would be like. Any time during that time period, you're gonna have the potential for a winter storm. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but it's just too far out to have any type of defined thoughts on that. Um, just a note for when you get questions, have a bunch starting at 7:50 p.m. Yeah, I saw. Let's see here. Even men's ownership has a limit on how much they spend. I know it. Look, I get it. I do. I get it. That I don't have a problem with. What I have a problem with is that they don't seem to have a plan at all. At all. Like, but hey, the O's got a good player, so good for them. Um, let's see here. I have no idea. When is a wife ever wrong? No, you're right. No, yeah. Yes. I You're absolutely right, which is why I started off with saying that people who've been following me in the summer know that I'm a diehard Mets fan. I'm in pain. I need therapy. I need therapy on why I even chose the Mets as a team to follow. That's the bottom. Perhaps, yeah, that could be it. I could just be a sucker for pain. I don't know what it is. The warming around the dateline, that's possible, at least for sports. The warming around the dateline looks like it will require a close attention. I agree 100%. I said in the winter forecast, things that could change the winter forecast that I have a key eye on that could actually make this stormier would be if we start to see warming around the date line, then you start to open up the potential for Miller A storms later on in the winter, perhaps in February. So yeah, I have my attention on that. And I said that from the very beginning in October. So yeah, it could be interesting. Do you think Northeast Ohio will get good lake effect snow this weekend? Uh, outside of my realm, but yeah, I definitely think they're going to have a good shot in some spots. I totally feel your pain, Steve. As all non-Met fans say, the Mets gonna Mets. Um, I look. All I could say about the Mets right now is, and I'm gonna say this as nicely as I possibly can. They should pay for every fan's medical psychological bills based on what they've done over the past 48 hours. I think that's fair. I think it's a fair trade-off. Forget the tickets. Don't expect people to come out to the games. In areas that receive rain, do you think ice will be an issue tomorrow morning? Not really. No, because with the cold air comes in, there's going to be a lot of drying happening. So a lot of that water, that standing is going to evaporate. Big news is Notre Dame refusing a bowl bid. Oh yeah, I heard about that. I'm not really big on college football, but that's pretty unusual. Um, they are publicly ripping the NCAA and the ACC for being passed over. Wow. Well, that's crazy. Well, all I can tell you about college football is that I I never really got into it, but don't ever go to Oklahoma and then say, "Hey, what's going on with Texas?" You might get a couple of threats. Trust me, I've been out there in Oklahoma. They take it very religiously to the point where if you say what's the difference between OU and OSU, you literally might be assaulted. So just a word of caution. So many teams rejected bids due to players already entering the portal. Bobby asks, La Nina is on borrowed time. I'm curious on your thoughts of a very obvious transition back to end zone neutral and soon rather than later. People seem convinced that February will torch, but a lot of winter outlooks assume, not yours, that La Nina background state would be running the show. I doubt it at this time, even if there was a La Nina hangover. Your thoughts? Okay, ding dong, La Nina is dead. Okay, first of all, that is the first thing I'm going to say. You could take that, share it, copy it, post it all over social media, and put it in anybody's post that goes ranting on about La Nina. Why do we know that? Because the SOI has crashed and burned. We're not seeing a strong tropical signal. Even when La Nina was really get going, it really wasn't producing a strong tropical signal. You had the MJO amplifying, and so you have to ask yourself, was this La Nina driving the MJO, or was the MJO driving the La Nina? At any rate, it has crashed and burned, and has been steadily moderating ever since. The subsurface, everything. So the next question you have to ask yourself is, how much influence did it have on the atmosphere? Well, typically in La Nina, let's look at the tropical influence here, right? In our last hurricane season, um, did we see a lack of shear? No. In fact, we saw a pretty robust subtropical jet stream. Okay. So, not very strong in the middle of summer. When it peaked in November, did we see a powerful southeast ridge? No. It was pretty weak. And the model guys try to push the southeast ridge, and every time it got knocked down. That's at the height, the strength of this La Nina. So the only way you can advertise a background La Nina state is if you saw the SOI having a hard time falling below 5 in the seasonal or month in the monthly values, and we're not seeing that. So the next question is, okay, well, how is the 500 millibar pattern acting? Well, it's reacting based on the strong negative IOD that's in the Indian Ocean, okay, the stratospheric disruptions, and the sea surface temperature gradients in the Pacific and in the Atlantic. Those are our drivers. And all those drivers are cold signals. There isn't one signal there that says torch. So another thing you could look at is the WPO, which is the West Pacific Oscillation. When the WPO is strongly negative, as it is, and is expected to remain negative all the way through the data that we have through January, this is a signal that you want to lean cold, not warm. So we have a warm northern Pacific. We have the Atlantic set up. We have the weakening uh, La Nina and signs that not so much that we'll see an El Nino pattern or anything of that nature, but the fact that we're seeing warmer water around the date line means we have a thermal gradient at the date line, which means you have convection at the date line. And we know via Coastal and Mussolini research in that you can read in the Northeast Winter Storm book, okay, from the AMS, we know that when we see a lot of convection around the date line, that helps support East Coast cyclogenesis. It's a signal. So you're seeing all these things run. And the problem with the models is that they're seeing so much change happening at one time, all these factors moving, that it cannot handle it. The AI, the Terminator, as I like to call him, completely, I said, I'm going to using him. I'm going to call him the Terminator as AI, and we're going to be friends. And I'm going to tell the AI, you need to learn history because you keep on repeating the fact that La Nina is here when it's already dead. So it needs to go back to school, okay? Along with all the other physics based models, which are following the same error. So these models are going to continue to struggle with this until it finally clears out this La Nina signal in the database. Once that happens, you're going to see these models flip and become a lot more reliable. I'm really not expecting that until January, but there's just so much going on, changing that this is all evolving. Now, when you look at the European weeklies, I noticed that. Let me jump over to some of these other questions. Can you mouse? Can you use a mouse highlighter when you talk about features and use a mouse as reference point? It's hard to see on the screen. I'll see if I can change that. I thought I did. I'll see what I can do about that. Euro weeklies are not great until 116. I honestly disagree. The Euro weeklies are exactly what I thought they'd be. That we move away from this extremely cold and we move back towards cold neutral. And that's exactly where you want to be if you're interested in winter storms. You want to be cold neutral because in cold neutral, that means you're on the gradient. Now, that doesn't mean your backyard's going to see snow every time, but it certainly doesn't mean you're going to get a suppressed storm track either. Is there a chance the models are underestimating the moisture available on Sunday? Even if they were, the problem isn't the moisture availability. The problem is that the nature of the trough that you're dealing with is progressive. And because you have a progressive, positively tilted trough, it limits the amount of time that you have for snowfall. That's the issue here, not the amount of moisture. And yes, Snow Boss is very happy because, yes, indeed, snow is on the way. Will you be doing a live chat for this event? We've actually already talked about this. There's a good chance Sunday. I will let you guys know. I'll put out an email on how I'm going to schedule this because usually I take the weekend more to like kind of recharge. But obviously, if it's going to be snowing, I won't be doing that. What? And you need it. Yeah. You need weekends to recharge. Yeah, yeah. So this is going to be one of those kind of pushing through with a lot of coffee type scenarios because I work from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day doing this. So sometimes I need I When we get to Friday, you're pretty burnt. Yeah, we're going to be ordering pizza early, I think, on Friday. Yeah. um, but I plan to, unless something health wise happens, I plan to. A Miller A is possible in late January. The key, okay, so what the possibility for Miller A's in January into February will strongly depend on what happens with Nino 4 and if we see positive anomalies showing up there. If we do, then I think we have a chance. Not guaranteed, but I think things get a lot more interesting with the subtropical jet stream. What would allow Sunday to shift north? You'd have to need the jet streak to shift northward, which right now I don't see any data for that support. Don't be surprised to see over amplification of the model guidance in this scenario. especially with the gradient, there's going to be convective feedback error. I can guarantee it. Especially with the initial NAM model guidance, it's probably going to be way warm when it handles this because it's going to see this gradient and over amplify everything and just produce like a bomb over the interior and rain on the coast. But then once it readjusts and gets rid of that convective feedback error, you'll probably see the trend going northwest and then southeast. You know how everyone goes trend, when in reality, it's just a recorrection of convective feedback. So I really don't see that. Lehigh Valley, I think you're on the edge of that 1 to 3 fluffy type snowfall based on what I'm seeing right here. Uh, Right now, I'm looking at this whole precipitation event more for Sunday morning. I am keeping an eye on the initial band of snow associated with this system as the low redevelops from West Virginia to Delaware and seeing how that moves through. But I suspect that's going to be featuring also a lot of Virga. So you might see snow on the radar, but nothing actually reaches the ground. Steve Cohen may end up being the Jerry Jones of baseball. I hope not. I will give him credit on this. He is stepping back and letting the general manager do the job. My only thing is that the general manager is an idiot. So that's the problem. See, here's the problem with, and since it's a question from premium members, I will answer it. Here's the problem with Stearns. He is the type of guy that comes off to me as he thinks he's an expert because he read books, but never actually did it. Never actually played the game or did the actual job. So I've dealt with these people before. All right. And yes. And here's the thing, right? When you think you're smarter than everybody else and not willing to take a mulligan and learn from things, you end up, oh, I don't know, reading markets wrong. Just saying. So, and I just want to also point out that Mr. Boy Genius never won a World Series, got the Brewers to the playoffs, but got knocked out in the first round each time. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. The Euro is showing some rain to start in northern Ocean County, Monmouth County. Do you see it? I think that the Malgines is trying to deal with the boundary layer on the immediate coastal plain. I would not be surprised because the cold air is coming in that you see a little bit of mix on the immediate coast, but I'm still fine tuning that. I think that's more down towards Cape May, but I wouldn't be surprised like if you are walking distance from the beach, I would not be surprised initially you get a little bit of rain mixed in with the snow in this scenario. Also, Judah talked about how 2019 with the PV could happen. What's your thoughts? In theory, it could happen. What happened in that involvement is that, well, the reason why I say it could happen is because it was such an unusual event because you had some cold air intrude from the ionosphere into the upper stratosphere that completely ramped up the polar vortex and made it super strong. I don't see any data to support that. The one of the ideas, which could be valid, is that you get enough reflective events that you build up the polar vortex that by mid-January it becomes strong. The problem with that is that all the other factors involved in the atmosphere, driving the atmosphere, would counter against that. Like, for example, the heat transport that we're seeing with the EP flux. So the question you have to ask yourself is what's stronger? The reflective process that we had from the initial disruption or the continuation of warm air transport from the troposphere, the mid levels of the troposphere to the higher levels of the stratosphere, causing the stretching of the polar vortex in the first place after that rebound. That is what that is why you have such a huge stretch here. This is why you're seeing in the guidance here, it goes everything from strong polar vortex to wind reversal. I mean, that is one hell of a stretch in terms of forecast solutions. So this is essentially like saying, well, the forecast 10 days, 15 days from now, or in this case, all the way out into mid-January, is anywhere between 80 degrees and zero. That's what I see here. Here's zero, here's 80. Okay, pick the forecast. Anywhere between 0 and 80. Can't be wrong. You want to go 40? Want to go 30? Want to go 50? All of them are right. You could see all of them here. So that's the problem here. When I see this is a lot of volatility here. So I wouldn't have confidence in going super strong polar vortex because a lot of the solutions here are leaning more towards rebounding towards neutral, maybe a little strong. But then look at the signals here. Look at the sine wave signals here. Why do we have these sine wave signals showing up here within this average? Why are we seeing that? Because what's happening here is that each one of these solutions are also picking up disruptions and dropping the polar vortex back towards below normal. So that's why you're also seeing this other average out here that's showing up, right? So this tells me there's a ton of volatility involved in this whole setup, which is going to be just a lot of fun. Difference between 2019 now and between 2019 and now is 2019 the sun was extremely quiet with very low solar activity. Sun is active enough right now that even with it underperforming as far as the effective flares, there's enough activity to prevent ionosphere from doing a repeat. Yep, that is definitely true. Now let me finally get into some social media, some YouTube guys. Wow, yeah. Holy crap. Yeah, yeah, it is definitely a busy night. Let's see what we got here. We'll skip the Met questions for now because we don't need to be going around. Yep. Let's see. You say La Nina is weakening, but over the next 15 days, stronger trade winds are forecasted according to 850 millibar solar mean anomalies. Won't that cause La Nina to re-strengthen? No. 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 First of all, I don't buy that forecast based on where we are with the MJO, and I don't think that this La Nina is re-strengthening. No. Uh, I'm liking the models and observations of locked in tall and slightly amplified ridge over the northwest U.S. for the upcoming weekend. Yeah, that is a big deal. Da, 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 da. Shortwave that gave Virginia their snowfall 2 days ago dug a bit more than expected because of slight model underestimation the amplification of the ridge. I agree, and I'm watching that, which is why I didn't buy the idea this morning when I was going over the forecast of just the scattered snow showers and kept the forecast with the light snow wording. Let's see. Does a strong temperature gradient imply that the end of December will be windy? Some days, absolutely, sure. Um, we will see a lot of Miller B storms. Definitely check out the winter forecast because I mentioned this a lot. I expect a lot of Miller B storms, which are somewhat of a nor'easter, but not the traditional Miller A storm, unless we see fundamental changes in the subtropical jet stream via a warmer environment in Nino 4. Well, yeah, I can definitely see wind gusts. I've been advertising that as well. Wind gusts definitely pushing above 35 miles per hour. I could see 45 miles per hour, absolutely. I never said definitely. I never, so first of all, I want to make this very clear. Most of you guys know this. I never make declarations of definitely a nor'easter. Uh, Someone says, I remember last winter you said if we get a stratospheric warming during early winter, then we would definitely have a nor'easter. I never say definitely anything. I mean, you guys know me. I probably said if we get a major stratospheric warming event or strong stratospheric warming event, that we'd have a better chance of seeing a nor'easter. I could definitely see that. Oh, what determines if precipitation freezes as a snowflake or an ice pellet? Okay, so when you have a snowflake, that means the whole column is frozen, right? When you get ice pellets, sleet, grapple, stuff like that, that means that some layer in the atmosphere, most likely around anywhere between 700 and 900 millibars, you have a warm layer, and that allows for some warming, but then not deep enough to keep that melted flake as liquid, so it refreezes, and so that's how you get your ice pellet or grapple. Uh, I don't expect a warm up in phase eight, so I can't. That's the problem. Is other people expect a major warm up in phase eight. I do not. So I can't. I will leave it to to those people explaining why they expect a major warm up or any type of sustained warm up. I could see basically get like an early phase and around Christmas Eve, let's say a Christmas Eve storm or something like that, that you get a warm up because the track is to our west. I could see that. That's within the realm of possibility, but I don't see a large southeast ridge or a torch, as some people say, because that simply is not supported in any of the observations. Not using the NAM yet, it's too far out. I'm not worried about black ice tonight. Uh, yes, convection around the dateline does influence the subtropical jet stream. The MJO can get locked into phases based on the way the convection sets up and the trade winds that align. Um, One of the issues with going with enhancement of the winds is that, and the GFS does this because it tries to drive into phase seven, but most of the guidance in the observations would keep you in phase eight. Phase eight is locked in because of what's going on with the IOD. The IOD keeps us in that phase eight region, combined with what else is going on in the stratosphere and how warm the northern Pacific is. When you look at the tropical connections here, a lot of people make the mistake of focusing on one factor and don't look at the complete picture, not only how what state they're in, but how in each one of those states how they interact with each other. And what you don't want to do is lock yourself into one rule and then constantly trying to shoehorn that rule into the current state of the atmosphere. In my opinion, while we look at the atmosphere, each interaction each year has its own unique mojo, so to speak, own unique um, characteristics. And so if you try to shoehorn what happened 2 years ago into this year, you're going to end up with a lot of errors because it's not true. Let's see what else do we have here. Yeah, my view of the GFS is burn it and destroy it. I have more hate for the GFS than I do for David Stearns. I'll put it that way. Um, and now they have an AI model guidance, and the first thing that the AI model guidance does is it is shown to have a cold bias, no surprise there, in the long range, and a convective feedback error. And that's with AI. So I just, as I said, if anyone wanted to get me a Christmas present, it'd be to destroy the GFS and get rid of it. I don't know about what I. All right, here's the thing: I am not going to bash other meteorologists for whatever they might be saying, warm, cold, or any other way. It's unprofessional. It's ridiculous, and they're not even here to defend themselves. So if I say something about XYZ meteorologists doing XYZ forecast, well, if they're not here to defend it, then I'm just being a jackass. Honestly, it's ridiculous. So no, I'm not going to question or attack or rip apart anybody else's forecast. I will just say I have mine and I have my thoughts. And if someone disagrees, hey, that's why meteorology is great. Everyone has a different perspective. Let's see, what do we have here on X? Uh, let's see. Um, let's
somebody's always going to comment outside the chat. Just that.
Let's see here. Can't watch now. Rangers are on. Okay. Curious about the forecast. 850 millibar temperatures on for Sunday. Possible snow. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but could this be a 15-1 event? Yeah, the cold. That's one of the things I'm going to be working on with the forecast is the snow ratio. It could be definitely. I think it'll definitely be up above 10, but I don't know whether it'll be to the extreme of 15-1. Um, but it's certainly going to be very interesting. I will say this: the forecast for this, I picked it out that hey, we keep an eye on the weekend of 12-14. Pattern looked favorable with that ridge popping, so not really all that surprised that we're seeing this setup, but certainly a lot of interesting data here. Thank you, El also Grande, no problem. Um, do you buy the GFS? I would sell the GFS if I could. Um, I would say that, as I gather more data, this is probably the best shot for accumulating snowfall. I don't know if it falls into the snowstorm category. When I think of snowstorm, I'm thinking like 6 to 12, 4 to 8. Um, I think this is more of a accumulating snowfall. The fact it's happening, if it was happening on Monday morning, it'd probably have a much more drastic impact. Anything on Facebook?
Check again.
And while we're doing that, let me go
Things went live.
figures. Any significant tropical activity? So far, there's no significant tropical activity in the Western Pacific that would create a pattern change or anything of that nature. Um, nothing. Okay, that works. Hey, it's 9 o'clock. Let's see what else do we have here. Why is EPO data not listed? It's listed. You can find it. Right now, the EPO data is positive because the WPO is so negative. This is a great time. Let me just go and explain this real fast. A lot of people get hung up on a lot of the acronyms we have here. Us meteorologists, we love our three-letter acronyms and our little statistical analysis. Here's the thing. When someone says we have a negative EPO or a positive EPO, my first question is how strong and where is it oriented and how is it impacting the rest of the atmosphere? So, and on average, this would be a positive EPO. Okay. We'll go all the way out to day 10, in fact. Okay. So this would come out as a positive EPO. You have a ridge over the Aleutians and you have a trough here in the Gulf of Alaska kind of bleeding in. But what you don't know, if you don't just look at the statistics, it's just how powerful the ridge is. And why is that important? If this ridge is so strong, it's going to set up a northwesterly flow, okay, down into the northern plains and cutting through the Great Lakes. So your cold air is cutting up into here, near normal here. This is more of a zonal pattern here, interacting with the subtropical jet stream. As I move forward and look at this pattern, if I just do the statistics, I would say, hey, look, we have a positive EPO warm pattern. But no, because this ridge is so powerful, it's allowing the cold air being transported from Siberia right into Canada and then skirting across into the northern United States. This is a pattern where you have your coldest air locked up here, slightly below normal here, near normal, probably around the northern mid-Atlantic here, and cutting up through the southern Ohio River Valley and Tennessee River Valley. You want above normal temperatures, head towards the Gulf Coast. That's where it'll definitely be above normal. But when I see this huge ridge, what it tells me is that it's so strong that it drives that cold air from Siberia and from northern Canada into the plains. If this was weaker, then you would make a better case for a deeper trough here. Your see this area right here, this green area, that would most likely be in here. And then you can make a case saying like, hey, You have this deep trough here, then you're going to be driving this ridge up here. But you're not seeing that because this ridge drives this whole thing and suppresses this part out. So once you look at the whole pattern setup here, you have to look beyond the statistics, you have to look beyond the operational guidance, and you have to look at the overall theme. And the overall theme is I have rising 500 millibar heights over the Arctic Circle and below normal heights starting to press southward. Now you just have to have to adjust for model error, understand what the models have been doing the past couple of weeks, and then you can make your adjustments. That's forecasting. Or you could just copy and paste this and then say, call it a torch. Whatever you like to do. I think that I will say this again. I don't care what the GFS does. I am done. All right, let me put it this way. The GFS statistically for the past 3 years, actually, you can go beyond that, but even 6 years, has been the worst model of all of the operational models. The AI won't be any better. I don't use it. End of story. Okay. So I think that's well, it's after 9 o'clock. I think that is pretty much yes it is. Let's see here. Let's see. I see Bobby was here tonight as a premium subscriber. Do you subscribe to any meteorologist sites as someone bounce ideas off of? Kind of like you were working in an office of weather pros. Um, I do follow several meteorologists. I haven't subscribed to anyone. Um, but if someone asks my opinion, I have no problem giving it. I think that is it for tonight. Because my voice is starting to go. I gotta save that for this weekend. We'll keep an eye on this storm. Again, we'll keep an eye on the jet streak dynamics. That's what's going to be key for this Sunday. If the jet streak aligns like I was showing today, then we got a moderate snowfall on our hand for the Mid Atlantic, especially for the I-95 corridor. If it doesn't, then it'll most likely fall apart. Um, but that's pretty much where we're at. YouTube is still going about the GFS. Someone really is the person going on about the GFS the one that built it? I think so. And for that person, I would say fix your convective feedback error, please. In the meantime, as always, stay safe out there.